Welcome to Asian American Life. I'm Ernabelle DeMillo. It's Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month, so we're paying tribute to courageous changemakers and trailblazers. Plus, my exclusive interview with Vilma Kari, the victim of an anti-Asian hate crime. We were with her when she faced her attacker for the first time since the assault 3 years ago. I'll have more on her story coming up, but first, here's a look at what's ahead. Medical student and musician fights to protect subway performers from violence. Empowering adults on the autism spectrum. First in her class, meet New York's first Asian American woman real estate developer. And New York Times best-selling author Chen Julie Wang's bittersweet memoir, Beautiful Country. This and more on Asian American Life. Vilma Kari was the victim of an anti-Asian hate crime right here in Midtown Manhattan. After 3 long years, justice was finally served. Her attacker sentenced to prison, and CUNY TV was with her every step of the way. I spoke to her exclusively after the sentencing as she turned the page on this chapter of her life.
It feels so wonderful. I wish I could hug everyone who was here. You know, I don't know them, they don't know me, but just seeing them smiling, I just feel so warm all over me. I feel like I do belong. I have a community where I do belong.
Smiling should come easier now for Vilma Kari. She spoke to me, all smiles, outside the Manhattan Criminal Courthouse after checking off the last box of a 3-year ordeal that started on an early spring day back in 2021.
Another brutal attack on an Asian American woman. Video shows a man repeatedly punch and kick the 65-year-old victim who was on her way to church yesterday in Manhattan.
On February 21st, a judge sentenced Brandon Elliott to 15 years in state prison for viciously and repeatedly beating Kari in a hate crime as he yelled, "You don't belong here."
I'm here because I want to support Tita Vilma and to work towards a world where there are no more people that attack our mothers, our family members, our community members.
While Kalian Mendoza prepared for the media outside the courtroom, community members, friends, even strangers crowded the hallway inside. They all had come to support Kari, who for the first time came face to face with Elliott.
3 years of waiting for this moment, 3 years of not being allowed to forget any details. This date was the death of a version of me that I will never have back.
Kari delivered an emotional victim's impact statement, later rereading passages to the press who were waiting outside. She delivered it with the same emotion, this time with the community right behind her.
This was a reminder that no matter how much I volunteered at my daughter's school, attending high school football games to cheer her on during halftime shows, shopping at the local malls and grocery stores, paying taxes, and participating in society, that I will forever appear different to some.
Kari's story, the hate-fueled crime against her, made headlines across the globe, thrusting her and her daughter into the media's glaring spotlight. Journalists camped outside their apartment building. Some snuck past the doorman. Instead of retreating inward, Kari and her daughter Liz decided to drive the narrative of her mother's attack. Liz transformed the ugly words, "You don't belong," into AAPI Belong, a nonprofit fighting back against anti-Asian hate.
It's been a long journey, and Mom very impactfully shared her side of the story and how this has affected not only her, myself, as well as the greater community and all of those that have suffered hate-based identity violence.
Today is a turning point in my story. I'm proud of the work I have done to stand here today, but the journey of healing will take a lifetime of recovery for myself, my family, and my community. I may have almost had the literal life kicked out of me by hate, but I will use the rest of my life to fight hate and discrimination for others.
But even with her attacker behind bars, even with the community behind her, even with her daughter by her side, the scars of her attack linger. So what's next for you now?
Healing. I would love to be able to heal completely. mentally and emotionally. Those two things are the one that I am fighting for. The fear, because I love to travel, I love to do things on my own, but I cannot do that now because of this thing. The fear is always getting into me. But hopefully, one of these days, I will be free from that fear.
And we hope that fear will lift soon. I'm Ernabelle DeMillo for Asian American Life.
If music has healing powers, then this electric cellist has the cure. Known as Eyeglasses, he performs in parks, on the street, and for the last 8 years, New York City's subways. And if that wasn't enough, he moonlights as an MD-Ph.D. student. Now, the good doctor started an advocacy group to better protect subway musicians. Here's the story. It's lunchtime at Mount Sinai Hospital, and Dr. Iain Forrest is dispensing his favorite medicine to a delighted lobby crowd.
You know, everybody needs an outlet, especially if you're doing a high-intensity occupation in the healthcare profession. And music is just so cathartic for me personally to be able to do and to be able to share with people.
Forrest is an MD-Ph.D. student at the Icahn School of Medicine at Mount Sinai, a doctor who moonlights as the musician Eyeglasses, performing pop song mashups on his electric cello at the hospital and underground in New York City's subways. One of hundreds of musicians on the roster of the MTA's Music Under New York program.
One of the most wonderful things about being in the subway, you'll have commuters, you'll have people who are late for a dinner reservation, whatever it is, and they'll be on their phones, they'll be plugged in with their headphones, and in a moment you can just grab them with music, have them stop what they're doing, unplug, and just immerse themselves in that moment with you. It's like no other feeling in the world to be able to, it's almost a superpower to be able to do that, really.
But his superpower could not stop this.
I was in the middle of a song with a large crowd that was watching, and from behind me, I just felt a really terrible, blunt pain on the back of my head. And I didn't quite know what happened. I was feeling really disoriented.
It was the second time Forrest was assaulted performing in the subway in a span of 8 months.
I think everybody, you know, who is of Asian or Asian American background has that fear in the back of their heads when something bad happens to them. And for me, it was no different. And you know, to this date, I still don't know what the motives of these individuals are, both of last year's attack and this year's attack.
The assailant caught on video was charged with assault. But instead of playing the world's smallest violin, Forrest launched the Subway Performers Advocacy Group, demanding better data and security from the MTA and the NYPD.
That's too many times it's happened to me, and it's happening to all these other people.
But even he was surprised by New York Governor Kathy Hochul's answer to subway safety.
To recap our 5-point plan, bag checks will be conducted by over 1,000 members of the New York State Police, MTA Police, National Guard. In addition to what the city is doing, we're coordinating with the city of New York.
It was validating that something is coming of our actions. On the other hand, it's also jarring because it was such a huge, drastic change. Armed people going down into the subway systems that many New Yorkers haven't experienced since the days of 9/11, right?
There's also been another drastic change. Eyeglasses has stopped performing in the subway, a ritual he's done for about 8 years.
You know, it breaks my heart that I can't share music that way. But what I've managed to do is pivot to sharing my music in other safer ways for the time being.
As Dr. Forrest, he continues to perform for patients.
Thing to know all the medical knowledge in textbooks, but it's another thing to have that empathy, to have that genuine connection with the patient and check on them as a human being rather than just as a file on your medical record.
As the performer Eyeglasses, the subway has transported the artist to other iconic venues, including Radio City Music Hall, where he performed with Josh Groban.
So will you grace us with a performance?
And Madison Square Garden. And he has a new single out called Tomorrow's Dawn.
Daylight slowly slips away,
But don't ask him to choose between two passions. For Dr. Forrest, music and medicine is one track.
It gives my life purpose and it grounds me that I'm able to both heal other people with medicine as well as through music. If you can express the feelings, the emotions, elicit, the deepest fears, the deepest apprehensions, the highest of highs, the joys that people experience, and you're able to distill that into a musical performance and to be able to marry that, with medicine, where you're literally caring for someone's physical, emotional, mental well-being as well. It's a tremendous responsibility, and it just gives me such joy to do both of those too, So it's a win-win solution. You make other people happy, you make yourself happy.
Eyeglasses will be performing at the Delancey on June 6th. For Asian American Life, I'm Rainer Ramirez.
I'm Vivian Lee in Bayside, Queens, where CIDA, an organization that supports families whose members are living with intellectual and developmental disabilities, has opened up a special cafe inside of its community center.
Hello, welcome to the CIDA Coast Bar Cafe. How may we help you?
The Coast Bar Cafe is brimming with a can-do attitude. These are trainees with the Workforce Development Program at Community Inclusion Diversity Alliance, or CIDA. The training is for people with intellectual and developmental disabilities, or IDD, including autism and Down syndrome.
So, various procedures for opening and closing businesses, cleaning, prep work, cash handling and register work, critical thinking, confidence building, social skills. The clients are actually being paid for their work here today, and that can go on their resume.
Learning new things, it's really great because I never learned those steps before. It shows me more confident, improve my skills.
I learned how to make coffee. Okay, even though everyone's nice, but there will be mean customers. Gosh, the mean customers are so picky, but I had to stay calm.
Statistics show a bleak landscape of job opportunities for people with disabilities. In 2022, the Bureau of Labor Statistics reported the unemployment rate for adults with disabilities who are able to work at over 7%. That's double the rate of adults without disabilities. CIDA is where people with IDD and other disabilities can feel belonging and growth. Kyung-soon Kim says CIDA has been a lifeline for her and her 25-year-old daughter, Hyunji, who has Down syndrome.
My English isn't perfect, so navigating the American social welfare system and finding information about services for children with disabilities can be daunting. CIDA has been invaluable in bridging that gap.
The architect of that bridge is Young-se Bae. When her son Eugene, now 27, was diagnosed as a child with autism, Bae had no idea where to turn.
You feel powerless, and in often cases, and I feel I'm kind of like marginalized in the process of decision making for my child's education.
Seeking strength in numbers, Bae started a support group for Korean-speaking parents like her whose children had disabilities. She also earned her doctorate in special education from Teachers College at Columbia, then turned the parent support group into the not-for-profit CIDA. In the last 4 years, of the nearly 400 clients seeking CIDA's help, 60% of them were parents of children with autism. She says her son planted the seed of an idea for a place for people like him with something he said as a high schooler.
He came and suddenly cried and saying, Mom, life should be about more than survival. Eugene, I asked him, Eugene, what do you mean life should be about more than just a survivor? And he said, school is not fun. Teachers don't understand. I have no choices. And I realized that this is exactly the problem in our special education system.
Choice, a building block of self-determination, drives the Co-Spire Cafe. It also motivates the Co-Spire Art Initiative, where CIDA's members create art with teaching artists from MoMA in New York. The Co-Spire Cafe doubles as a showcase for their work. These are the spaces where CIDA's members feel seen and heard.
we create projects. First we talk about the self-determination, the concept in very, very plain language. We talk about what your interests, what your strengths, what your needs.
CIDA also helps parents feel seen and heard. This Korean to English glossary, an A to Z list of Korean words for English terms used in special education, was compiled by CIDA, reviewed by the Federal Office of Special Education Programs, and published by the Center for Parent Information and Resources in 2021.
Without vocabulary, we cannot communicate with the school system. We try to empower ourselves by learning the law, learning our rights, and like also being a partner with the school system and improve together. Our ultimate goal is creating a sustainable community. Oftentimes, the concept of a disability always has to be like a sympathy. What we want is actually the empathy and to be part of our movement.
Enjoying the special brew at the Co-Spire Cafe, I'm Vivian Lee for Asian American Life.
I'm Kyung Yoon. We live in a time when women are making professional strides as leaders in many industries. But one sector, real estate development, is still lacking in diversity. I spoke with a leading woman real estate developer in New York, who also just happens to be Asian American.
Margaret Lee is the CEO and principal at Youngwoo & Associates, a leading real estate development company in New York City. She and her longtime business partner, Youngwoo, are the team behind more than 50 landmark developments in New York and beyond, including New York City's Pier 57, now home to Google, Chelsea Arts Tower, the Bronx Post Office, Radio Tower and Hotel, and Dragonback Estate, the world's largest vineyard estate in Mendoza, Argentina. It's been a journey of many decades and one full of challenges.
We're competing with a lot of developers who are generation developers. Their fathers, their grandfathers did real estate. And here we are as first generation Korean immigrants, and we're trying to compete in this big boys club. And the only way that we could have survived and been successful is to be different, to be a little bit more bold about, where we go, what we do, and be more creative.
Their company made its mark by thinking outside the box in bold and innovative ways. Their Sky Garage condominium development is one example. Luxury residences in West Chelsea for high-profile New Yorkers, where their cars literally have their own rooms adjacent to their living spaces.
It is very luxurious. It's only 16 apartments, and a lot of celebrities bought because they were, people who were tired of paparazzis following them. They could just, drive into their apartment. So it was a very good thing for the celebrities.
And Lee has developed more than just luxury residences. One of the projects she is most proud of is the recently completed Radio Tower and Hotel in Washington Heights, which has helped to transform the heavily ethnic Dominican community.
It's the first ever built in over 50 years, a Class A office and hotel. And it's like the pillar, it's like the lighthouse of Washington Heights. It's the tallest building, it's the brightest building, and the community really loves it. And that makes me feel good that we did something for the community as well.
As one of few women real estate developers in a male-dominated industry, Lee has been recognized for her leadership. She says she's had to work twice as hard to prove she belongs at the table.
It is challenging because they have a stigma of what, women, short Asian women are like. Or, they're definitely not in real estate development. So they, it takes them a longer time to understand. And sometimes, it just takes time and you just have to prove it. And so it's not impossible.
Margaret Lee was born in Korea and moved to Vietnam when she was 9 years old. Her father worked for Korean Airlines, so the family moved often, ultimately arriving in the United States, where she grew up in many different cities. She loved art, and her dream was to be a professional artist. But after she met and married her husband, Icahn, who is now a renowned artist, she says she decided to put her own artistic aspirations aside and go to law school, which led to her career in real estate development.
We were struggling artists, and we decided one day one of us has to go out and get the bread for the table. And so, we talked, we argued, and, who's going to be the one that continues to paint. And in hindsight, he's continuing to paint, and he's a very successful artist. And so in hindsight, I think we made the right choice.
And Margaret Lee says what she enjoys the most about her career is the multifaceted aspects of real estate development.
It's kind of like a conductor. You have the oboe, you have the violin, you have all these different sections, and you have to maneuver and make it a beautiful music by collaborating everything together. And that's what a developer does. You have to make sure you get the financing, you talk to the architect to get the right concept and design, and you have to do the construction, you have to do operations, all of these things together.
And Margaret Lee says her company's next big project is developing data centers to meet the growing demand for infrastructure driven by artificial intelligence and our increasingly digital world. I'm Qian Julie for Asian American Life.
In her memoir, Beautiful Country, Chen Julie Wang recounts her childhood growing up undocumented in New York City. I sat down with Wong to discuss her harrowing journey and how it influences her work now as a civil rights litigator, advancing education for marginalized populations. Chen Julie Wang's life these days resembles nothing of her childhood, which was wrought with turmoil and instability, growing up impoverished and undocumented in New York City.
It was this big history that I had hidden and kept for a long time, but it was also kind of the core of who I was as a person.
Wong's best-selling, brutally honest memoir, Beautiful Country, details her life after coming to the U.S. from China with her parents at the age of 7, struggling to adjust to a new language and culture while facing extreme poverty, living as undocumented immigrants in constant fear of being caught.
A lot of people read my book and they talk about the physical deprivations, the hunger, the poverty, but I think many people who go through trauma probably have this experience. For me, that was not really the hardest part. The parts that were hardest for me to grapple with was the emotional trauma, seeing my mother minimized and treated in ways that no child wishes to see their parent treated, seeing the conflict that grew and began to divide my parents as we were all struggling together.
A struggle that started when Wong's father, who was a critic of the Chinese government, fled to the U.S. after being persecuted. Wong and her mom followed 2 years later. Once in America, Wong's parents, who had been professors in China, took up menial jobs to survive. Wong says to escape her troubles, she spent countless hours in the library.
No matter how long I spent in the library and how much time I spent flipping through books, I never came upon a story like mine. And it taught me that there was something inherently wrong with me, inherently wrong with the way my parents and I came to America, the way that we came to exist and survived in America.
It was that thought which years later inspired Wong to write her memoir. A difficult decision since much of Wong's story focuses on her complicated relationship with her parents.
It was really processing the memories and then writing this book and putting it out in the world that I think gave all three of us closure. They both read it in one sitting, and they cried and they laughed and they called me after, and my mom was just honored that I had remembered so much of not just the hard parts, but the joys. And she said, we've forgotten how there was light and laughter too. Because when you keep a secret for that long, it just becomes all dark, and nothing is all dark. And my father said, there's nothing we're afraid of now. Now that the story is out there, now that the story is yours and ours, we're not afraid of anyone finding us out as being frauds. This is our life and this is our journey.
An incredible journey for the undocumented child who came to America unable to read or write in English and later went on to attend Yale Law School. Now Wong's journey has come full circle as she's the managing partner of a law firm that protects the educational rights of children with special needs.
Being undocumented, being afraid of the law, and now being in the courtroom every day, like it seems like at such odds with each other, but that is exactly what I wanted to do. I wanted to overcome that fear. I wanted to for my community to have access to the courts just as any other community does.
The lawyer and author finally became a citizen in 2016, 22 years after coming to the U.S. She now considers the vital contributions of many undocumented immigrants.
There are a lot of undocumented immigrants here that are doing jobs that Americans would never want, and without those people who are serving our dishes, who are cleaning our houses, who are delivering our food, I wonder what our society would look like and why their contributions, just because they're not anchored to a certain university or a certain academic program, are viewed as less than or not viewed at all.
Wong hopes her story provides a source of strength for those currently living in the shadows.
The thing that I wanted to hear my whole life was, it's not your fault. It's not your fault that you're in this position. It's not your fault that you feel the way you feel. And there's nothing inherently wrong with you. And everything can be temporary. And just because you are living under certain circumstances now, they do not have to be your circumstances forever.
Now long removed from the circumstances of her childhood, Wong, who recently became a mom, reflects on her mother's journey with an enormous sense of gratitude.
I used to be very angry at her for some of the choices that she made, and now as a mom myself, I see the impossibility of the position that she was put in, which was not just personal, it was structural, it was systemic. And that's what motivates my work, and it motivates me to be, I hope, a good mother, and with all the privilege and options I do have now for my daughter.
Wong is currently working on a historical novel set in 1910 Chinatown that traces the arrival of the first Chinese Americans in New York City. For Asian American Life, I'm Susan Jun.
That's our show for now. If you want to learn more about our stories, be sure to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok at Asian American Life. And have a great Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month. I'm Ernabelle DeMillo. We'll see you next time.